So guys, today I will be showing off my Lavinia rocket. Don't know how it's pronounced, but just showed it off there in the blueprint. And we're gonna quickly make an orbit. This entire video is at 2 times speed, by the way, just so everyone knows. So, got up to 40 kilometers, that's what I usually do. Or 35, whatever, I can barely read it. But just making an orbit, and forgot to mention the first stage deploying, but there goes the second stage, and we now have an orbit. Now, I've decided, with the insane amount of delta V that this thing has, to encounter every body in this system, or that this has. Here you can see me deciding what to do, because I previously had not decided. So, getting to the transfer window, and lining up for the burn. The first part is very fast, but that's why it took me a while to catch up. So, here we are making our burn. I always burn a little bit before the transfer window because, as you can see, the encounter is slowly moving down the orbit, although it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So, there we go. And now I'm going to deploy the fairing and use RCS to line up the encounter. Now, this is probably one of the longest times it took me to screw around with the encounter. What my goal here was to use Venus to get me to near a Mercury encounter. Or at least down to its orbit. So, lining that up to the lowest point, and then looking at Venus to make sure I'm not crashing into it. And there we go. I time warp to Venus because sometimes if you time warp almost directly to the periapsis, then it will cause a few issues, to say the least. Sometimes you can enter the atmosphere. Anyways, lowering my orbit while at Venus periapsis. Not a lot, though. And deployed the main stage. And now, this rocket was basically designed to be a rocket on top of another rocket. So, a rocket carrying rocket. And as each stage is deployed, the one that starts burning has more and more delta V. This stage here probably has about a kilometer or 2 a second of delta V. I have not done actual mathematics or measurements, but anyone who plays FSS, yeah, trying to see if I had pronounced that properly. Well, could probably do the calculations, but I don't suspect that anyone will. So, there's the Mercury encounter, and I did it so well that it is inside of Mercury, so just had to fix that. Now I'm going to use Mercury to gravity assist me back up, and I'm just trying to get my orbit as close to the ground as possible, at least around a kilometer. Because the closer you are to a planet, the better the gravity assist is going to be. So, now, I'm going to get an Earth encounter to then launch me up to a Martian orbit. Now, there you saw I could have done it then, but that was about 16 meters a second of delta V. So instead, I wait until I catch up to it, which this one is 4 times less. It's 400 meters a second of delta V. So that's why sometimes waiting is beneficial. There's our Earth encounter. I kind of wanted to use the moon here to make my encounter better, but a moon encounter only works well if it's before the periapsis. And every time I tried it here, it was after the periapsis, so I'd have to line it up without that. I think there actually was... No, there wasn't a moon encounter, you see... Or no, that's later. That's in this next one. I have to do another Earth gravity assist to get to Martian orbit. You can see the game freaking out. Now here we have a non-expensive burn. And I burned a bit too much, so I wasted a bit of fuel there. I realized I could have sped certain parts up, but I didn't feel like editing. I have procrastinated so many videos, mainly because I want to put background music into them. Again, here's me screwing around with moon encounters, but I decided against it. But yeah, that's going to be our moon encounter for this mission. There we go, launched away. And now it's time to navigate to Mars. And here is where we crash the game 1 of 3 times. As I pass Martian orbit, the game freaks out and crashes. That's what happens when you try to calculate it too many times. But a simple way to fix this is just to end the navigation. But at this time, I thought that lowering my orbit would help. So here's me attempting that. Game crashes. Go back in. Now, this rocket was originally designed to land on Venus. That's why it has its name. It's because it's one of Venus's plantilias? I'm going to say plantilia. I haven't viewed it. And the game here crashes again. I realized how quick I said that. Sorry about that. I don't have scripts. Now here the game was crashing right as I joined into the game. And so eventually I realized there was only one way to fix it. And I entered the wrong app there. So there we go. I build a new rocket. Simple way to fix it. If your game keeps crashing at a certain point and you can't fix it, just spawn in a new rocket. And that's the dumb thing right there, is that it had already made an encounter by itself. I didn't even have to do anything. So, Martian encounter right there. But then I realized that my orbit got lower, so I set it to the other side. And it makes it equally higher. So, Mars gravity assist, and there's our Mars encounter. So, now it's time to get a Jupiter one. This one I knew would be an expensive burn, especially since it didn't occur at periapsis. Or apoapsis, for that matter. but periapsis still would have been much more efficient. As you can see, we're going to run out of fuel, and time to deploy the second to last stage. Staging on this rocket is set up for Venus. And there's our Jupiter encounter. Now, Jupiter was the easy bit. The hard bit is getting an encounter with all of its moons. Also, here I saw the thing flash up, so I decided to get that. And here I decided I would save that there for a screenshot. So yeah. Eventually I realized it wasn't going to be that useful for me to make that complex of an orbit. It would just take a lot of time. And I mean, this video already was almost an hour long to record. So I align it up in a way that makes it almost equal from the start. Wait, no. I make my orbit as close as possible to Jupiter's in terms of how it's arranged. Now, I couldn't do it perfectly. I did this so that it would be easiest to get an encounter, although I don't think it would be any different if you were to line up from another place. So, oh boy, my nose is bugging me. But yeah, there it is, high Jupiter orbit, and circularizing my orbit. There it is, and now I make an attempt to get an encounter with Castillo. Castillo? I don't know. Again, I didn't see the text. Callistio. There, that's it. Callistio. Also, unfortunately, there I accidentally retracted one of my satellites. Here I set up an encounter that would at least launch me a bit more down. And there I accidentally undeployed it, so I tried deploying, or I accidentally deployed it, so I tried to deploy the other satellite. And at one point I do manage to click on it, but I didn't notice that. Right there. Also, you might have seen those heat shields have their, like, deploy thing, but they don't actually fall off. They are still a part of the craft even after I deploy them, so those heat shields are undeployable. Here, I immediately get a prompting for another encounter, which I needed. Setting that up. And it's a pretty good one, too. Gets me right down to Ganymede's orbit. Here the game was freaking out a little bit. I was scared that I had lost my rocket, which had actually disappeared there for whatever reason. Anyways, this game should very soon get its, or I hope soon at least, will get its water update for Earth. I'm quite excited for that. Here I had the chance to have a Ganymede encounter, but I decided it would be more fuel efficient to go to Io after being at Apoapsis. and then move my periapsis up. So there's our IO encounter. And I've set up most of the encounters to raise my apoapsis. And this is just because it'll make my Jupiter escape easier. And also Jupiter happens to be in the right point for that escape to be useful. There's our transfer window for our Europa encounter. Now we need to get Ganymede. Here the transfer window starts freaking out. But again, patience here is key for trying to get the best encounter. Here I decided to raise my periapsis, and here's for the final stage. The ion stage. While this stage may seem very inefficient for speed, but in terms of fuel efficiency and its speed efficiency, it's actually decent. These 3 ion engines accelerate this one portion of the craft, which consists of a single too high thing, fuel tank, stretched out from 4 wide to 6 wide. They accelerate this thing at they accelerate it 5 meters a second per second, if that makes sense to anyone. So, set up an Earth encounter thing and started making my way to escape Jupiter. Well, it did give me a prompt here to go to Earth from a transfer window. That goes below Venus's orbit, meaning I will be expending much more fuel than I would like to. So I waited until I was outside of Jupiter and waited for the transfer window to pop back up. Now here I figured it wouldn't go far, and I could just burn. And when I saw that the thing wasn't there, I didn't think too much of it, because that happens a lot. I'll start a transfer window burn, and then I will blast myself right out of it. So I don't really think too much about this stuff. I realize that there's been a lot of silence in this video, but I don't really have that much to say in some segments, like when I'm making transfers or encounters, because this video is full of like 10 encounters, so there's not really much to say. Holy crap, I just realized that I didn't actually encounter everything. I forgot to encounter Mars's moons. Well, I mean, still close to everything. Mars's moons are just asteroids. So I think it's still fine. I mean, technically, if you had the willpower, you could still encounter everything. Also, a lot of these satellites you see right now are debris. Oh, and there's the game's third crash. Again, from the game overcalculating. Man, Phobos and Deimos really didn't come to my mind. Forgot that Mars had moons. Then again, do you really get to see them in the Martian sky? This is another part that takes a lot of patience. And the game crashes again from overcalculation. It's always at periapsis. Actually, no, wait, the other two didn't happen at periapsis. I guess it just happens now whenever you cross the orbital path. But there it is. We now have our Earth encounter. Now, instead of going straight into the atmosphere, which you can see if I were to do so, it would break the ion engines. I decided to expend a bit more fuel than that. This top stage, the stage before it, has about 2 to 3 kilometers a second of delta V. This stage has about 3 to 5 kilometers a second. Again, I haven't done the math, but this stage is super efficient. Here I was trying to see if I could do another moon encounter thing, but I decided against it. I spent quite a bit of time just messing around with this. So, here I finish out the burn. Thinking about the ion engines, it totally reminds me when there was electronics in the game. Can't wait for those to come back. I would like to add right now, while we're waiting for this, that there are no cuts at all in this video. It's pretty obvious, but I don't think I'm that good at smooth cutting. Took quite some time to decelerate. Nothing the ion engines can't handle, though. While the ion engines take time, they make up for that in efficiency. I guess I can say that this spacecraft was accidentally perfect. You can land anywhere you want to and still return home. Heck, even twice. I've designed it for that. I've brought in this thing to Venus and back before the ion engines were even a part of it. So, this I think is the second to last burn. Yeah, this is second to last. And here is the final burn. After this, I will enter the atmosphere and never return. There was my low battery pop-up. I didn't have my phone plugged in while recording. But bring my periapsis down to 0 and enter the atmosphere. The ion engines will get destroyed, but due to their light mass, they won't affect the tilt of this thing too much. This is probably the longest I have actually spent in the game with my game rotated sideways like this. Anyways, deploying the parachutes, and the speed is now back to normal. I did this so that I could talk for a little bit longer, but yeah, so blueprint is going to be linked in the description, and for those who feel like it, you can go to Phobos and Deimos and complete the mission that I kind of failed to do. And so, I'm pretty proud of this rocket. And for anyone who happens to play Kerbal Space Program, I'd like to know if there is an engine similar to the Titan and Hawk engine in this game. I think it would be fun to try and recreate this, but better in Kerbal Space Program. Here at 100 meters, I zoomed out to show the full thing as it came in for its landing, and in fact turned off the time acceleration. So, we have landed. There's proof. See y'all later. Bye.